Good afternoon, folks, and welcome back. Cumberland Outdoorsman here with you again, and today I'll be covering yet another subject in my 22 rimfire series. This one is a rather popular subject and has been around for a little over 40 years now, and it'll be covering the practical use of hypervelocity 22 long rifle loadings. Up until about 1977, the 22 long rifle high velocity hollow point was at the pinnacle of 22 long rifle performance in terms of power and velocity. Then in the year of 1976 going into 1977, CCI changed all that and they introduced a new cartridge. This was something that was never seen before, folks. It was the CCI Stinger, and many of you are very familiar with that particular cartridge because it's wildly popular even to this day. It boosted the performance of the 22 long rifle high velocity loading by about 300 feet per second at the muzzle. Most 22 long rifle high velocity hollow point loadings leave the muzzle at around 1,230 to 1,260 feet per second, which is quite fast for a small diminutive cartridge like the long rifle 22. But the CCI Stinger boosted that performance up to 1,600 plus feet per second. You know, they reached that goal of 1,600 feet per second, and they actually superseded it. And the way they did it was they lengthened the case by 1/10 of an inch and added more powder and lightened the bullet somewhat. And they used a special slower burning powder that would actually harness most of the power from that charge through a 24-inch barrel, as is the case with the rifle that I have here behind me. Here I've got some vintage CCI Stinger ammunition. This was their first box. This is the way it was labeled. It had a picture of the CCI Stinger on the front, and here a description of it being the world's fastest 22 long rifle. It pretty much bridged the gap between the 22 long rifle high velocity hollow point and the 22 Magnum. Okay, so falling somewhere in between those two loadings. Here I've also got another vintage box of CCI Stingers. This came out a few years later. Still pretty much the same box, same loading. And here I have a commemorative box of CCI Stinger. This is their 40th year anniversary from 1977 to 2017. So that's become somewhat of a collectible, as have the others. And then this is pretty much what you see nowadays. They have the same size box. It's no longer a blue box, it's just a clear plastic box. And the muzzle velocity here at 1,640 feet per second. Still has a 32 grain hollow point bullet. That being said, the original Stinger was actually constructed somewhat differently than the newer ones. Here I've got both of them here, and the first ones came out, they look pretty much the same. The first one came out with a deeper hollow cavity, and they have this 5-pointed hollow tip, which at that time was called their penta point. Penta meaning 5. And what that did is aided in the even expansion of that bullet so that it would blow open more evenly with 5 petals peeling backwards. Okay. And here is their newer version. You can see that just has a round hollow point. And I measured the depth on these two different loadings, and the newer hollow point is not quite as deep as the older version, so it's probably not quite as explosive either, which I'm kind of glad to see, because those bullets come apart almost too quickly on game the size of groundhogs, or, well, we call them groundhogs here in Tennessee. They're woodchucks north of the Mason-Dixon line. but this aids in deeper penetration, so more of the bullet base actually stays intact and drives deeper to ensure a quicker, more humane kill on animals that size. Then, after the Stinger made its debut, Winchester came out with their version of hypervelocity ammunition. This is the Winchester Super X Expediter. Okay, and it actually has a 29 grain hollow point bullet. Looks very much like the Stinger. I'll show you one here. I'm not sure when they stopped making those. There's supposed to be a newer version of these out, but I haven't seen any here in my area. That's actually vintage ammunition from, I want to say 1979, 1980, somewhere in there. Here's the bullet. It also employs a longer case with a hollow point bullet, and I've used these on vermin such as groundhogs and I think I shot a crow with one time and a couple of pigeons, and let me tell you, they really do a number on them because they're explosive on impact. And the velocity of these cartridges actually goes a little bit higher than the Stinger, the CCI Stinger, due to the lighter bullet. Then Remington came out with their version of hypervelocity 22 ammunition. And this is one that many of you know. This is the Remington Yellow Jacket. It has a truncated cone, hollow point, and this is actually a vintage box right here. This is a full box of vintage ammunition. And there you can see, when I open the box, you can see those huge hollow points there. Please pardon the background noise. There's some guys building a house over here, but anyway, I want to get this covered. Now these didn't have quite as high a velocity as the Stinger or the Expediter, but they were still rather destructive and explosive on vermin at reasonable ranges. I think the muzzle velocity of these is just over 1,500 feet per second, which is still quite a bit more than the standard high velocity hollow point. Here's a newer version of the Remington Yellow Jacket, and they still have basically the same look to the box. Remington cleverly put a yellow jacket on one of their cartridges there. That's a really neat little advertising ploy. But those are pretty good cartridges, actually. And I'm hoping now that Remington is making a comeback. I just recently heard that their ammunition plant is opened the doors and they're producing ammunition now. I'm hoping that those cartridges there will actually be continued, and hopefully they'll make good quality ammunition for all of us to enjoy. Then lately here, Aguila came out with a hypervelocity loading. Here is their Super Maximum. This is also supposed to be a 1,600 foot per second cartridge. Doesn't have a nickel plated case. Here, I'm going to show you one. But it has a longer case, just like the Stinger and the Expediter. But instead of a hollow point, they have this flat point. So that bullet will drive quite a bit deeper because it's not going to expand like a hollow point will. You know, it's not going to blow open quite as readily. There are other versions of hypervelocity 22 ammo. Here's something else I picked up. I've never seen this before. Maybe some of you know about this. This is supposed to be 1,500 feet per second ammunition. I don't know. I've never seen it. And let's see. Made in Mexico. Pardon me. And then recently, CCI came out with this copper 22. Now this is really, really fast ammunition. It says here 1,850 feet per second. You know, that's right up there with the 22 Magnum. But it only has a 21 grain bullet. And I don't know what use it is for. I mean, it's kind of an odd shaped bullet. It has somewhat of a hollow dimple there at the tip, but I don't believe it's designed to expand. It's made out of some type of copper polymer. I'm not sure what it is. It's definitely not lead, though. It's a non-lead bullet. And as far as I'm concerned, it could probably be used for pest control, things like that. It says here on the box, 21 grain for used for small game. Okay. And one of the most interesting cartridges that CCI has come out with is the Velocitor. Now this employs a full 40 grain bullet traveling at a muzzle velocity of 1,435 feet per second. Here, I'm going to pull one out. It looks a great deal like their mini-mag loading, CCI mini-mag. The hollow point is not very deep. It's more of a dimple, kind of like the Winchester Dynapoint, only a little bit more generous, you know. But that bullet will actually expand on impact. I know because I've tested it. And if you go back in my videos, you'll see where I tested this ammunition and compared it with other high velocity hollow point loadings. Here I've got a book that was printed in 1980. Now, I've showed this book before on other videos, and in it they discuss the three loadings that I mentioned at the beginning of the video: the Stinger, the Expediter, and the Yellow Jacket. And they go into detail about how much powder and the weight of the bullet and what kind of a performance that you can expect. So if I can find the page here, I'll show you. Okay, here we go. With CCI Stingers, they actually generated 1,684 feet per second with around 202 foot-pounds of muzzle energy, using a 32 grain copper plated slug that was shaped after the CCI Maxi-Mag 22 Magnum bullet. Pretty much the same shape. And they have their 5-sided pentapoint nose opening, which was in the initial CCI Stinger loadings. And let's see, they had a 1/10 inch increase in the cartridge over the regular 22 long rifle cartridge, and they employed 3.6 grains of a newly developed slow burning Hercules double base powder. And then the Winchester Expediter also boasted 1,680 feet per second. I'm sure that that'll vary depending on which gun that you're going to use, you know, what length barrel you have, and it all depends on the weather conditions, the barometric pressure, all that's going to vary. But you can pretty well expect velocities exceeding 1,600 feet per second out of the Stinger. And if you have any of these Expediters left over, I don't know if you want to shoot them or not. They've become somewhat of a collectible. I'm hoping that Winchester will continue making these, or they'll, you know, come out with a newer version. So anybody out there from Winchester, please take into consideration the will of sportsmen like myself. But anyway, the Expediter had a 29 grain Lubaloy hollow cavity bullet with an escape velocity of 1,680 feet per second, generating a muzzle energy of 182 foot-pounds. It employed 3.8 grains of tiny rolled ball powder, and the mid-range trajectory for the Expediter is a minimal of 2.5 inches. That's between 0 and 100 yards. That's a 2.5 inch drop from the muzzle to 100 yards, and that's pretty flat. That's some flat shooting for a 22 long rifle. And finally, the Yellow Jacket had a high velocity truncated cone hollow point projectile at a conservative 1,500 feet per second of muzzle velocity with a muzzle energy figure of around 165 foot-pounds. Okay, but let me tell you, that 33 grain bullet that they came out with in the Yellow Jacket performs very well. And you know, that brings me to the point, what practical use does the outdoorsman have for this kind of ammunition? Well, if you're going to hunt small game such as squirrels or rabbits or anything that's meant for table fare, they're probably a little bit too destructive. You know, if you hit a squirrel with a stinger or something like that, I mean, it's going to tear that squirrel up pretty bad. It does quite a number on them. You can make headshots with them, but you're going to have a mess on your hands, let me tell you. They're more suited for game the size of raccoons, groundhogs, or woodchucks, rats, for example, or pigeons, you know, feral pigeons or crows or anything like that that's just considered vermin or pests, where you're not worried about the quality of the meat. You know, they're fine and dandy for that, provided that your rifle shoots them accurately. And that being said, we're going to do a little bit of testing. I want to do some velocity testing, accuracy, and performance. Also, I'm going to be chronographing the different loadings. So stay with me. Maybe we'll find out something new about these cartridges and this particular rifle. So let's get with it and start doing some shooting here. Okay, like I said, I'm going to be shooting at 50 yards, and I've got my target set up downrange here. Get that centered a little bit better. Okay, and I'm only going to be shooting 3 shots for each type of ammunition. First up, the CCI Stinger, and I tend to believe that these are going to be shooting a little bit high, so I'm going to be holding at the bottom of each target. So first off, the one on the upper right corner. 3 shots. Here we go. Yep, like I thought, quite a bit higher. Wow. Well, that's loud for a 22. Okay, this gun is not sighted in for hypervelocity bullets, so bear with me here, folks. Here comes shot number 2. Okay. Shot number 3. That's kind of strange. All right. Next up, we're going to try the Aguila Super Maximum, and that'll be the middle target. This is a non-hollow point hypervelocity bullet. Okay. Next up, the Velocitor, CCI Velocitor, and we'll be shooting at the far left upper target. Those are printing a little bit lower. Actually, they're hitting right where I'm aiming. That's a consistent little load. Okay, now we're going to try the Remington Yellow Jacket. Bottom target on the left. It's just below the bullseye. Bam! Not too bad. I'm going to reshoot those CCI Stingers because I have a feeling they're going to be more consistent. Okay, next up we're going to try some of this vintage ammo. This is the Winchester Expediter. See what kind of accuracy we can get out of these rounds. And that'll be the bottom right target. I have a feeling these are going to shoot kind of high too. Yeah, right at the top. Wow, well that was a sharp report. A little bit to the right. And the last round. I don't want to shoot up too many of these because these are hard to get anymore. Okay. I want to hit just above the bullseye. Well, folks, here's the target that I just shot. This is the first group I shot with the CCI Stinger. Now let me clarify, that was with a clean barrel. Okay, the first shot went way up here, second shot went way down here, and then the third shot way up here. And then once the barrel got leaded in, it shot a little bit better. Here's the Aguila Super Maximum. All three shots right there inside this 2-inch rifle dot at 50 yards. This is the bullet. It's a flat nose, 30 grain bullet, hyper velocity loading. That's it right there, the Super Maximum. Thirdly, we have the CCI Velocitor. That's 1,435 feet per second, copper plated hollow point. I featured this bullet before last winter when I compared it to other 22 high velocity loadings. And that's 3 shots right there together. That's pretty impressive. That's easily covered with a penny at 50 yards. That's about a 1/2 inch group right there. And then the most impressive group was surprisingly shot with this Remington Yellow Jacket. That's also a hyper velocity loading. Now that's over 1,500 feet a second. I think 1,525, something like that. There's the bullet. And they were still being made the way they were originally made when they first came out. And that's all 3 bullets there touching one another at 50 yards. That's a shirt button size group, and that's very, very impressive. You know, a lot of people talked about Remington ammunition as being low quality, but groups like that I'll take those any day, all day long. You know, that's very, very accurate. And then I use the Vintage Expediter by Winchester. There's the bullet. Looks very much like the Stinger. Same kind of cartridge case. I believe that has a 29 grain bullet. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's a very light bullet traveling at over 1,600 feet per second. Those two hitting just a bit high. I had to aim down here because they were shooting high just like the Stingers. And then one fell out of the group right there. And then lastly, I shot this group using this ammunition. I think most folks probably aren't familiar with that. This is something new that I just ran across here recently. And that's the bullet right there. It's also a flat nose, but it's a 34 grain bullet. And by the way, I think the Yellow Jacket, as I mentioned, was a 32 grain bullet. So there you have it, folks. That's the speed as compared to accuracy. You know, high velocity, high speed bullets compared to the accuracy that I'm getting out of this Remington bolt action that I've got here. Next, I'm going to be shooting into some wet newspaper to see how well some of these hyper velocity loadings will perform at 50 yards. So stick with me. Okay, up next here we have a whole stack of wet newspaper. And I'm going to be shooting these different brands of hypervelocity ammunition into that newspaper and then recovering the bullets if I can. First up, it's the Remington Yellow Jacket, and we're going to be shooting 1 round per test. So here we go. I'm aiming at the upper right part of that newspaper. Okay, now I'm going to be shooting the CCI Stinger. I'm going to be aiming low. It should hit on the right side, close to the middle. Now I'm going to sacrifice one of these Vintage Expediters. I'm going to be aiming on the other side of it. Aiming kind of low. Wow. Pow. That was loud. Okay, action's open, guns unloaded, safe to go down range. We'll see how deep these hypervelocity loadings actually go into this wet newspaper. I'm really curious because I've never done this test before. Well, we're getting ready to find out. Okay, that was the Yellow Jacket, that was the Stinger, and this was the Expediter. We'll see how deep these things penetrated. Okay, Expediter's right here. The bullet's right in here somewhere, or what's left of it. There it is. That's just the base of it. and completely separated. There's the outer part of it. Okay, that's the Expediter. As I expected, it penetrated the least. And let's see, there's the yellow jacket. Wow. That's impressive. Look at that mushroom. Didn't come apart quite as violently as the Expediter, but had almost the same penetration. The Stinger kept going. Okay, there it is. There's part of it anyway. Let's see. There's the base of it. That's the CCI Stinger. Very similar to the Expediter, only somewhat deeper penetration. And the reason for that is because the Expediter has a deeper hollow point. Okay? And it's traveling at roughly the same velocity as the Stinger. But it came apart more violently and didn't penetrate quite as deeply. So let's try some of the other hypervelocity loadings. Okay folks, next up I'm going to be trying some of this Aguila Super Maximum. And we'll see how it performs on that stack of wet newspaper up there. Next I'm going to try this CI Hypervelocity. And then thirdly, we'll try out this CCI Velocitor. Okay. Rifle is unloaded, empty, safe to go down range. Here we go again. 3 more shots here. It's just to kind of give you a rough idea as to the performance of this hypervelocity ammo and how it would do at a 50-yard distance. You know, everybody else wants to check everything right there close to the muzzle. This is more realistic because you're going to be encountering game at longer distances. So anyway, that's the first shot, second shot, and then third shot. I think these are going to penetrate quite a bit deeper than the others. Yep. See that bullet? It kept going. Wow. Well, if they don't have a hollow point, they really penetrate. Still going. Very deep penetration here. Okay, these two last ones here, let's see. That's the CI. Pretty much a solid point. Had no expansion. That one there kept going. Okay. There's the super maximum. Boy, that thing really penetrated. I mean, it went through quite a stack of newspaper. A lot deeper penetration, folks, because it doesn't have a hollow point to stop it. So let's see if we can find that Velocitor now. Okay, folks, I found the CCI Velocitor, and there it is. The front of it expanded, but the bullet stayed pretty well intact. Now remember, this is not a very scientific test. This is wet newspaper, and it's not really wet enough to cause massive expansion. As you can see, some of this is still pretty dry. But anyway, we have some bullets here to compare. So I'll see you back at the shooting bench. Well, here I am once again at my shooting bench, and right now I'm going to chronograph these hypervelocity 22 loads to see what the actual numbers actually come up to. So without further ado, let's go ahead and test out the Stingers first. Alright, this is the CCI Stinger. $1,611. Let's do one more shot, just to be sure. $1,596. Okay, next we got the Aguila Super Maximum. $1,618. $1,603. Okay, now we got this vintage Winchester ammo. This is their Super X Expediter. Here we go. Well, that one didn't register for some reason. Okay, let's try that again. $1,635. $1,632. Okay, next up we got the Remington Yellow Jacket. Here we go. 1,388. $1,391. Okay, and finally I'm going to be using the CCI Velocitor. We'll see how it stacks up. $1,393. $1,397. Well, folks, I think I'm going to go ahead and close out this video now with some final thoughts. The sun's starting to go down, and let me just offer my thanks for sticking with me throughout the testing. I hope that you found some useful information for whatever needs that you may have with your 22 long rifle. I always try to provide some useful information along with some entertainment, but you know, it's not always so easy to do. I think you can tell by now that my favorite cartridge for this particular rifle would be the Remington Yellow Jacket. So if I were to go on a varmint hunt, I believe I'd choose that right there, simply because it proved to be the most accurate out of all the ones that I tested. When you get groups like that at 50 yards where all the bullet holes are touching, you know, that's showing a lot of promise. Another group that showed a lot of promise was this one here that I shot with the CCI Velocitor. You know, that's 3 right there going right into a ½ inch. So that little cartridge offers a lot of promise. Now that's not taken away from the Stinger or the Expediter, which I'm sure not many of you have out there. There may be some people that are watching this that still have some of this on hand. You just got to get out and test out whichever one works the best for you. And that's what I would urge for you to do before you go on any kind of hunting trip and any kind of ammunition that you want to use. Test it in your rifle first for accuracy, because that should be your #1 consideration. All the power in the world is not going to do you any good unless you can deliver that projectile precisely where it needs to go. You know, we as sportsmen and outdoorsmen, we should strive for the most humane and ethical shots on any kind of game, and that's including vermin and varmints. You know, you don't want to cause any unnecessary suffering. Now, in terms of power and velocity, I think some of the numbers didn't quite measure up to what was advertised. I think the Stinger came in right at 1,600 feet per second, which is somewhat shy of their 1,640 advertised velocity. Now that's out of my rifle and out of the conditions that I have here. Those results can be different out of your gun, or you know, if you have a different barometric pressure, different temperature, different altitude, all that will fall into play. You know, a few feet per second here or there is not going to make a whole lot of difference. But the one that came out on top, and not surprisingly to me really, was this old vintage ammunition, the Winchester Expediter. It hovered between 1,630 to 1,635 or 40 feet per second, which is a little bit ahead of the others, you know. And I'm sure that out of a good rifle on a good calm day, you could probably get pretty good accuracy with these. But like I say, you know, these are no longer available. But if you have some of these on hand, if you have a brick or two on hand and you want to get out and do some varmint hunting, I don't see any reason why you couldn't check these out and try them in your gun, and I'm sure that they would perform well, you know, at reasonable ranges. The fact that Remington is starting to make a comeback now. I hope that they continue making the Remington Yellow Jacket, because this is a very popular cartridge. And there's another cartridge that they came out with. It's also a hypervelocity loading, and that's their Remington Viper, which is pretty much the same shaped bullet, but it doesn't have a hollow point. You know, it's not hollow at all. So it's not really designed for explosive expansion. But you know, if I were going to use that kind of ammunition, I probably would use that on something heavier, such as raccoons, foxes, bobcats, things like that, at reasonable ranges. Coyotes and bobcats, you know, that's getting a little bit on the larger side, but at closer distances with good, clean marksmanship, you shouldn't have any trouble harvesting that type of animal with the 22 long rifle, provided that you're a cool marksman. You know, you need to put that bullet right where it needs to go. But I once witnessed a coyote being taken at right at 150 yards with a 22 Magnum. Now you take that and cut it in half. Say we'll just cut that in half. You should be able to make the same kind of shot with one of these loadings at up to 70 yards. You know, 60 to 70 yards. And provided that bullet is going in the right place, you should be able to take that animal cleanly. So anyway, let me not ramble on too long. I'm going to go ahead and close out here and offer my thanks once again. I do appreciate you watching. And remember, if you like to go outdoors and you like to go hunting, fishing, shooting, camping, hiking, whatever it may be, I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. And also remember, hit the like button, hit that bell icon, and subscribe. That way you'll know when more videos like this will be coming your way. So until next time, my friends, y'all get out and enjoy the great outdoors. We'll see you.